The Suez Canal handles 12% of global trade and earns Egypt $10 billion per year. In 2021, a stuck ship halted $9 billion of trade per day for 6 days. In 2025, Houthi attacks forced major shippers to reroute around Africa. Since 1963, Israel has had a plan for a rival canal through its own desert, bypassing Egypt. Estimated cost, $100 billion, never built. That may be changing. This is the Ben Gurion Canal, a 300-kilometer waterway through the Negev Desert that would rival the Suez Canal. The original engineering plan involved 520 nuclear bombs. This video covers why it has never been built and why that is changing. The Suez Canal earns Egypt roughly $9 to $10 billion per year and handles 12 to 15% of global maritime trade. It sits entirely within one country's territory, and that concentration of power has been a geopolitical problem since 1869. Egypt nationalized it in 1956, triggering a military crisis. It was closed from 1967 to 1975, choking global shipping for 8 years. The Ever Given blocked it for 6 days in 2021, halting $9 billion of trade per day. And in 2024 and 2025, Houthi attacks on the Red Sea sent companies rerouting around Africa. Every one of those crises restarted the same conversation. What if there were a second canal that did not go through Egypt? The Ben Gurion Canal is Israel's answer, first formally proposed in 1963 and never fully abandoned since. The origin of the Ben Gurion Canal is one of the stranger footnotes in Cold War history. In July 1963, an engineer named H.D. Maccabee at the Lawrence Livermore National Laboratory wrote a classified memorandum for the U.S. Department of Energy. The memo proposed a 160-mile sea-level canal across the Negev Desert. Standard engineering for terrain this challenging would be, in the memo's own words, prohibitively expensive if indeed possible. The proposed solution was 520 underground nuclear explosions. The plan was part of Operation Plowshare, the U.S. program to find peaceful applications for nuclear devices. 4 2-megaton bombs per mile, the memo calculated, would do it efficiently. The document was classified until 1993. The nuclear plan never advanced, but the canal idea never disappeared. It resurfaced after the 1967 Six-Day War, again after the 2021 Ever Given incident, and continuously since October 2023. The proposed canal would run approximately 260 to 300 kilometers from the port city of Eilat at the northern tip of the Gulf of Aqaba, northward through the Araba Valley between Israel and Jordan, around the Dead Sea Basin, and then northwest through the Negev Desert to the Mediterranean coast near Ashkelon or Gaza. It would be longer than the Suez Canal by roughly a third. Each of its proposed 2 lanes would be 50 meters deep and 200 meters wide, dimensions that exceed the Suez Canal's depth by 10 meters, and would allow the world's largest container ships to transit without the draft restrictions that currently require some vessels to partially unload before entering Suez. The Negev's rocky walls would require less maintenance than the Suez Canal's sandy terrain. The canal would be sea level with no locks, eliminating transit bottlenecks. Advocates project it could generate $10 billion per year in transit fees, potentially recovering its $100 billion estimated cost within a decade. 3 immediate problems. It requires crossing the Araba Valley bordering Jordan. It requires controlling the route near or through Gaza. And it requires building 300 kilometers of canal through desert terrain without any engineering study, funding agreement, or international consortium currently in existence. The Ben Gurion Canal has been shelved repeatedly since 1963 for 3 reasons that have not changed: cost, politics, and route. The cost is estimated at $55 billion to $100 billion, with no engineering study ever confirming the figure. The 2015 Suez Canal expansion, which added a parallel channel, cost $8.5 billion. A full competing canal would be roughly 10 times that scale. The politics center on Egypt. A rival canal under Israeli control would directly compete with Egypt's $9 to $10 billion in annual Suez revenues. Egypt's opposition has been total and consistent since the idea first emerged. The Abraham Accords normalized Israeli relations with the UAE, Bahrain, Morocco, and Sudan, but did not include Egypt and did not address the canal. The route problem is most immediate. The canal must cross the Araba Valley near Jordan's border. requiring either cooperation or Israeli ability to secure 300 kilometers under whatever regional conditions exist at the time of construction. Most route proposals pass near or through the northern edge of Gaza before reaching the Mediterranean. What has changed since 2023 is that Israel has significantly altered the physical and demographic reality of Gaza, and political discussions in Israel and internationally have, for the first time in decades, openly included the canal as part of longer-term regional planning. In December 2025, Israel formally recognized Somaliland, which some analysts interpret as part of a broader strategy to establish a presence near the southern entrance of the Red Sea, directly relevant to the canal's Gulf of Aqaba starting point. None of this means the canal is being built. There is no construction timeline, no funding consortium exists, no formal engineering study has been commissioned by the Israeli government. But the variables that have kept it shelved for 60 years are shifting in ways that make the conversation more serious than it has been at any point since 1963. The original 1963 proposal involved 520 nuclear bombs, calculated as the only economically viable excavation method. The document remained classified for 30 years. Egypt earns $9 to $10 billion per year from Suez. The Ben Gurion Canal advocates project $10 billion per year in transit fees. A functioning rival canal would effectively compete for a significant portion of Egypt's national revenue. The Suez Canal was blocked for 8 years after 1967. 15 ships trapped inside became known as the Yellow Fleet. Their crews spent 8 years anchored in the Great Bitter Lake, waiting for the canal to reopen. The ever-given blockage in 2021 halted $9 billion of trade per day for 6 days. Roughly 369 ships were waiting when it was finally cleared. The proposed Ben Gurion Canal would be 300 kilometers long versus Suez's 193, but 10 meters deeper, allowing the world's largest ships to pass without the draft restrictions that currently limit some Suez transits. Here is the question nobody who discusses the Ben Gurion Canal can answer directly. If Israel controls Gaza in the long term, does the canal's route become physically possible for the first time? And if it does, do the $100 billion cost and Egyptian opposition suddenly look like solvable problems rather than permanent barriers? The Israeli government has not officially endorsed the canal. No feasibility study exists. No funding consortium has been identified. But the canal keeps coming up. Think tank papers in 2024. Netanyahu adjacent commentary in 2025. Gulf states discussing it as a counterweight to Suez dependence. Egypt viewing any Israeli canal with open alarm. Whether the Ben Gurion Canal goes from a 60-year proposal to an active megaproject depends on political conditions in the Middle East that are more in flux than at any point in decades. The desert is ready. Everything else is still being decided. The original engineering solution for the Ben Gurion Canal was 520 nuclear bombs. This was presented in 1963 as the practical, cost-effective option. The conventional alternative was described as prohibitively expensive, if indeed possible. The nuclear option, in contrast, was apparently just regular expensive. The memorandum remained classified for 30 years, presumably because someone eventually decided that we are planning to detonate 520 nuclear devices in the Negev Desert was the kind of sentence that benefited from a cooling-off period before public release. Here is where the Ben Gurion Canal stands. 60 years of proposals, no engineering study, no funding, no construction. A $100 billion cost estimate with no verified methodology. An Egyptian government that views any rival canal as an existential threat, a route through some of the most contested territory on Earth, and geopolitical conditions changing faster than at any point since the Suez Crisis of 1956 that inspired the idea in the first place. The canal is not being built, but it is being discussed by people who do not usually discuss purely hypothetical things. What happens in Gaza and across the region in the next few years will determine whether the Ben Gurion Canal remains a classified 1963 memorandum or becomes the most consequential infrastructure project of the 21st century. If this story caught your attention, wait until you see what happened when an actual shipping route was blocked in 2026 and what $20 billion is being spent to prevent it from happening again. That video is already on the channel.